of you with us for another session, which is session 13 actually, for an adventure in learning with Anil Sachdev. It's a reflective conversation on the art of learning itself, how we unlearn the old ways, stay curious, and continuously evolve in rapidly changing world. Today we will explore different mindsets, methods, and the meaning behind the learning, how to learn, how to unlearn, how to be more adaptive in the ever-changing technology world, and the meaning behind the learning itself. It's a skill that empowers us to explore our inner abilities for scaling up our personal and professional growth. Today, friends, I, Dr. Neetu Jaiswal, is your faculty host from the Soil Institute of Management, and co-hosting with me are Mr. Balachandra and Mr. Amit Saha. I'd like to introduce both the co-hosts. Mr. Balachandra is a senior HR professional with over 30 years of experience in the corporate sector. As CHRO and President, Brand, Corporate Communication, and Corporate Affairs and ESG at Ashok Leyland, he's currently leading CSR and sustainability initiatives and skill development initiatives for the organization. Earlier to this, he was President and Chief People's Officer for Aditya Birla Group. I welcome you, Mr. Bala, for the session today.
Thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Amit Saha. He's the founder and CEO of Pro India, which was founded in 2018. And as Mr. Amit defines, Pro India is a bunch of passionate individuals who have come together to solve the plastic pollution problems of India. Earlier to this, he has 30 years of diversified industry experience and has held several leadership roles as Chief Sustainability Officer at Hindustan Beverages Private Limited and as Director Supply Chain. I welcome you, Mr. Amit, for the session today.
Thank you, Dr. Neetu. Thank you, Anil.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Anil Sachdev, he needs no introduction. Frankly speaking, it is an honor to always interact with you as faculty member and being a part of Soil Institute of Management. Anil is the founder of and the CEO of Grow Talent Company Limited and the School of Inspired Leadership, which is Soil. Grow Talent was created in July 2000 and became a leader in strategic HR consultancy by 2006. Anil, along with co-founders and Grow Talent, entered the field of education by starting Soil Institute of Management at Gurgaon and Soil Institute of Business Development at Manesar, where education is focused on the 5 pillars of inspired leadership, which is compassion, diversity, ethics, and mindfulness. At the Institute, we are very privileged to have Anil as our mentor and an inspirational guide. In our various earlier sessions, which we have had with Anil on inspired leadership, we have actually benefited from his lessons in leadership, which have covered areas like why do we change? Why do we resist change? What are the different capacity development that may be required to become a leader, and how to apply some of these techniques in our daily lives in enriching our personal and professional growth. So today's topic is very interesting, very relevant, which is learn how to learn. We look forward to this interaction, and with this, Mr. Bala, I hand over to you to take the session forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and as I had mentioned, Neetu, I just want to make some opening comments. So I'll tell you why this subject, learning how to learn, is fascinating. Many times I have met people, and in my own life, I have found situations where one needed to do something differently. So one knew that it is required to do something differently. One knew, therefore, one had to learn something because there was a gap between where one wanted to be and where one was. And one even tried to put effort to learn that. But sometimes it would take more time, and by that time, the context changed, and sometimes one paid a heavy price for not learning that in time. So it's a subject which personally I was very curious. I have been curious about for a long time. And I think it's very important to understand that even though we have a desire to learn, and sometimes we even put efforts to learn, what should we know about this theme of learning how to learn, so that if you learn only how to learn, then everything else which is worth learning could be acquired. So sometimes this strikes me that in the opening few weeks in an educational program, even in soil, if only we could prepare our students and give them this or develop this capacity, not give them, but create or an environment in which they would learn how to learn, I think our job would become much easier. So I think this is something very, very important to understand what is the way that we learn how to learn. Hmm? And it's quite fascinating because in at one level, when I compare it to the spiritual knowledge is extremely subjective knowledge, but that is the knowledge. Once one learns that, then all other forms of knowledge are revealed. So in that sense, I mean, the nearest one can say to the subjective knowledge about self, which is the spiritual knowledge, which makes us then develop all other forms of knowledge, which is objective knowledge. If I apply the same metaphor in the field of learning, if I only learned how to learn, then I would be able to learn whatever I need to learn. So that's why this is such an important topic. So I just wanted to say this. But Amit, please go ahead, ask me the question that is bubbling up in your mind. Or was it Bala you were to ask the question? Bala, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Bala.
So thank you so much. And it's certainly an interesting topic, and certainly something that one would, deeply reflect on our own learning styles. I think the question and the topic really made me reflect as to how and in what manner the learning maturity happen in our own personal lives and in our own corporate lives. So I have a couple of starting questions, and one, of course, Anil being Anil and the storyteller that you are, I'd like to ask a personal question in terms of how is your learning journey been, and what most importantly, which has been your most exciting or most powerful learning experience. So I would certainly like to hear from you, because you bring in not only the perspective but also the whole ethos behind it. And second, of course, one other observation that I've had, and more from a practitioner perspective, learning which has been a very, very natural process during college, during school, during our formative years, suddenly becomes a structured, forced, by design exercise when you join a corporate, or when you join a society, or when you join a set of a community. So, why is this transition happening? And is it the fault of the individual, or is it the fault of the organization, or is it the fault of the system? And how do you address this? And what are your views, or I'd really like to learn from others as to why this transition from a natural process to a structured, from a design, from a default process to a design process? That's my opening question.
So since you asked a personal question first, I'll start with a personal anecdote and then connect it to the second question that you talked about. So the personal anecdote, I will not name the client, but we were working with one of the world's largest energy companies with about revenues of $100 billion. And I and an American colleague were hired by the CEO's office and by their university to work with the top 600 leaders, whom they call TopX. The assignment given to us was to design a learning journey for these people and take them on what is called a learning expedition to the Bay Area in California for a week. And I and my colleague did this assignment twice for these TopX, and therefore about 60 people we covered. And some other colleagues, for reasons I will explain in a while, then took over and took it to the next few journeys. And then the organization figured it out how to do it and did it themselves. But because we did the first two cohorts of about 60 leaders, here is what I and my American colleague encountered. We met the CEO's office people. We were told what the CEO wants. We met the head of the university and the woman who was working with us. And we were given a brief, and then we were asked to design how this week would look like and what we would facilitate. And there was this wonderful company which organizes learning expeditions that designed an agenda for 5 days. And we were expected to facilitate visits to companies. For example, one day we spent with Accenture, the next day we spent with Intuit, the third day we spent with Exxon, fourth day we spent with Cisco, and so on. And we would accompany these leaders, facilitate interaction between these leaders and senior leaders of those companies, and then make them reflect on that experience and bring back what was most important to apply in their own company, because the company was undergoing a major transformation. It was very interesting because this process was being done soon after the merger between two companies, this original company and another big company. I must say that the preparation given was all based on what these people told us, and then we gave them a design. I and my US colleague, although I had fair bit of exposure to European companies, but I absolutely was not prepared to what happened. When we arrived there, we found there was extraordinarily high resistance to learn anything and high resistance to us facilitating learning. And we found there were two groups inside that from the two companies. One was one part of Europe, the company, the other was the other part of Europe, not very far off from each other, but for reasons I understood much later, extraordinarily suspicious of each other. And we were not prepared for that at all. So they were very upset with the company for the way they had brought the two companies together. They were upset with their leadership. And they vented out all the frustration on us two facilitators. So we became the target. And we were quite rattled with the feedback that they were giving us, including asking, who the hell has appointed you people? Why are you being given this task? And so on and so forth. Later on, I've learned that it was a complete lack of preparation on our part and the client's part on exposing us to the politics in this merger and the sensitivity of the intercultural competence. So it was one of the very painful assignments one did. And later on, when this taught me a very important lesson, that dealing in cross-cultural environment, one has to prepare very hard on understanding the nuances, and one can't take people at their face value. And I think since then, whenever I got an exposure to work on any global assignment, including I did a lot of coaching for senior leaders in Europe, I learned to ask questions which I had not been asking, which I almost thought it was not my prerogative to ask questions like geopolitics between leaders, and what are the hidden agendas when people do that, and those kinds of questions. So I think it was very, very valuable learning. And I learned it the very hard way. And I wish one had not gone through the pain of what happened when we did this assignment. Now, I'll connect it to your question, Bala. See, on one hand, there has to be an intention to learn. On the other hand, one has to have a very high degree of self-awareness on what does one need to learn. And then one must be aware of the strategy to learn, meaning the methods I would use, what is the best way in which I learn, and also be willing to put the effort, especially when my own paradigm, my own assumptions are being challenged. Because a lot of learning involves unlearning. When your own assumptions are challenged, and you get actually into pretty disturbed state at that time when there is complete chaos in your mind because everything that you knew is being challenged. And so in that particular state, the self-awareness you have, your own strengths, how will you use them, your own weaknesses, and how would you avoid getting into the trap? So, and then your own willingness to put effort, because ultimately it's about what effort will you put and how do you learn from your effort, how do you reflect from what happened, how do you gain understanding, and then how do you actually learn the things you need to learn. So this is what I wanted to say. And organizations very rarely do the in-depth thinking on preparing people on what is going to be required to enable them to learn. Here is how simplistic many organizations are on their learning agendas. They believe this is what people need to learn. They immediately think about some kind of training, getting in some kind of experts, finding the best way to deliver, maybe give people some learning modules. These days, hybrid learning, online learning. Some more evolved ones know that it's not just the content and material that you are subjecting people to, but it is some people are aware that people have to actually start doing new practices, new projects. And these are not projects which are manufactured for the sake of learning, what we typically call action learning projects. I have seen these action learning projects miserably fail in many companies because the business as usual leaders resist their time being taken and they accuse HR and learning and development departments of creating some disturbance in their agenda by action learning projects which they think are not relevant. So I think it doesn't get made on specially created action learning projects, but when people are doing work on important projects that they are in any case involved with, which we call strategic priorities of the firm, and in that their learning agenda is consciously designed, and then the organization goes into the depth of understanding how would we create a learning community, how would we create the learning trigger points, how would we create actual application of the knowledge people are acquiring, provided they're acquiring the right kind of knowledge. So I think that whole ecosystem has to be well designed so that people actually learn by doing and not just learn by talking about doing in some simulated environment, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
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 Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe
So,
Amit has a question.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'll pick up your last line, learning by doing. And Anil, for me, in my corporate career as well as the last 7 years in a startup, I've been doing just that. And multiple roles that I've executed, most of them I did not have the pre-set what do you call skill sets to execute. One of them being responsibility of the sustainability, which was by itself very new for India in 2012 when I started doing it. And even in this role, which is a startup, which means that I don't have a very big team, and most of the work starts coming to me. And no, I have to find out various automation methods, and now using AI, learning AI, and then moving on to get my work done. So, what so far I have understood is that the major proponent or the force comes from within to learn, because one gets a very challenging situation, whether it is personal or it is professional, and it could be either a setback or it is something as a gap in even in people interactions. I have faced the same, or it is a pure skill gap. Like, no, I would not know anything about finance before I started my startup. I mean, yes, I would know how to read PNL, but then really how to really manage my cash flow is something like that. So, first question to you is what is the true motivation or what is the true need? And from your own examples, the ones which you would straight away recall as one clear learning example for me was this XYZ. Would like to hear from you. And did the motivation come from within, or was it from outside forces? Like most of the corporate people will have, okay, you got to go learn this, and this is a LMS module. Go on to that, finish it up, get a grade, and not show the result. So, is it generally out inside out, or is it outside in?
You asked for my own example. So I'll give you one example at an early part of my career, and I'll give you another example from a more recent context. The early part of my career, I was 27 years old in Aisha. From HR, I was transferred as head of the operations in the Faridabad plant. So there were several hundred people. I never worked in a plant, never handled manufacturing. My managers who worked with me were much older and more experienced than me. But somehow my chairman at that moment, Mr. Vikram Lal, felt that I had the potential, that I needed interfunctional exposure. So at a very young age, I was put there. Here is what I understood. I was not an engineer, but having worked with Tata Motors in Pune, I was asked to handle the training of engineers, graduate engineer trainees. And my dialogue with them, and also sitting in interviews where we used to select people from engineering colleges and IITs with my engineering colleagues from Tata Motors who were very good engineers, I could learn a lot by just observing what they were asking and paying attention to how they were interpreting the answers. And including when I was handling the training of graduate engineer trainees, I often accompanied them to the shop floor to observe the way they were working and so on. So I decided early, I'm not an engineer. I can't sort of pretend that I have the engineering solutions to the manufacturing problems that the plant had. But I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed creating a team. I enjoyed creating a community. And I understood that I must not, if people are coming to me for some answers on the technical side, obviously they know that I'm not an engineer. But also I am not pretending to know something about engineering and therefore give them the answers. I decided to use my own approach of being a learner and by telling them, but since I was fascinated by their own subject, I would often ask them questions which were innocent questions but probing questions to understand how does the process work. For example, if we had extra consumption of some cutting tools in the machine shop, why would you have that consumption? And was it something to do with the machine setting? Was it to do something with the material? Was it something that the machine process was not under control? And so on and so on. These are innocent questions. The more I asked basic questions to enjoy learning from them, the more I understood they were getting help to solve the problem. Not that I had the answer, but I was asking questions. And, just the curiosity to learn, because I'm a very curious person and I enjoy working with people. So I was able to learn quite a lot on, how to, therefore, work in a plant and how to work with teams. And I think the three things that helped me was not pretending to be an expert at all, asking something very basic and fundamental and simple questions, having the curiosity and enjoying working with people. So I felt this was something that helped me a lot.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And I think that those three are the most relevant coaching traits, right? So you were a coach at 27.
Yeah, you may call them coaching tricks, but at that time,
Yeah,
I
being
was not a
curious,
trained
asking
coach or
relevant,
anything, which I
asking
became
questions,
later.
and
Yeah,
not expecting to be an subject matter expert. Those are the three things as
yeah,
a coach
yeah,
probably one should have.
yeah, yeah.
So great, that's very good. I think I just have a follow-up question on your experience. And no, since we share the first company together as Aisha. No, yours was Tata, but Aisha was one of the common companies. So For me, it is no. My learnings have come from being in the situation, no, good or bad. Being in the, like for you, I just explained that you were put in a situation in Aisha Tractors Faridabad as an operations head, being an HR person. So no, my experiences, my solid experiences, and really learning inputs have come through when I am into that situation. And most of the corporate guys are not. Sometimes, learning becomes one of the KPIs. And I think, no, that you have to finish this certification, you have to be in this, you have to learn that. So how far can it go from actionable learning? And are there other methods of learning which are equally powerful? And no, I have very limited experience. My experiences have been all experiential learning, but are there other experiences? And maybe, no, that is something that you can dwell upon. And then probably I'll hand it over to Dr. Neetu, and she has some very similar set of questions, I guess.
Yeah, Amit, thank you. There are other methods. For example, I have seen my colleagues apply that, and I have applied that by consciously shadowing somebody and observing.
Mm.
I observed deeply what did Mr. Vikram Lal and Aisha do, because I worked very closely with him. I observed very deeply what did some of the people whom I worked with and my clients do. For example, how did Mr. S.D. Kulkarni of Larsen and Toubro do something, or how did Mr. A.M. Naik do something? I was very blessed and fortunate to work with these leaders, and I was able to, almost because I spent a lot of time with them, I could understand and observe the way they were handling situations, the way they were, even though they had the answer, how they were encouraging decision making. I also saw somewhere when one leader was dominant, what it was doing in the context. What was it happening to people? I saw the gentleness with which, for example, a Cyrus Mistry worked, because I had some interaction and did some assignment with him, also with Mr. Ratan Tata. So I could observe some very interesting things about these leaders. So one is shadowing and learning by observing. The other thing is, I personally, this is my bias. Even if you haven't understood something 100%, do an experiment, try out. Learn from that experiment. Of course, there is this learning style model where some people are theorists. They first want to understand the cause and effect relationships. Some people are more like experimenters that I am talking about. Some people are more believing in reflection by doing that. Some people want to first have all the a conceptual understanding, as I mentioned earlier, and some people are more pragmatic. They're always looking at the application. So these learning styles are different for different people. But what is most important in this is to really be conscious to say, what's my context? What do I need to learn? How will I know that I'm actually learning? What's coming in my way as I'm learning? And inevitably, there will be gaps. So how do I handle that failure? Sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves. We almost announce to the people the future even before it has occurred. That means we make a commitment to others without accounting for the learning journey. We somehow announce, oh, I will be able to do this, or the organization will be able to do this. So I think the openness to learn and adapt as we go along and do experimentation. I am a great believer in experimentation and learning from gaps and failure, as you might call it, and encouraging people to take responsibility. And Amit, the last point I want to make here before Neetu asks me a question. See, one thing is very, very important for all of us who are leaders, who want our teams to learn, organizations who want people to learn, or as teachers, we are trying to create a learning in our schools. One most fundamental truth: people are responsible for their own learning. No leader is responsible for your learning. No organization is responsible for your learning. No teacher is responsible for the student's learning. The best we can do is to create an environment, given the context, and the best we can do is we could learn the subtle qualities of a great facilitator which can enable learning. But the ultimate responsibility is the person. That we should never forget. That's what I just wanted to say. Hmm? Yeah,
Thank
Neetu, go
you.
ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And taking cue from here, it is very much agreeable that learning is a continuous process. And believe you me, each one of us in our personal life and more so in our professional life wants to grow, learn, and grow. So there are technical side of things where functional expertise is required, and there are ways by taking up courses, the best academic course or a project course, which will enable you to work. There is another side to it, which is more personal in nature, personal by way of being a personality in yourself. Are you, as a person, you get afraid in situations which is ambiguous? Are you a person who can take the lead and take the challenge? Have you got the ability to work multidisciplinary with many people from different areas, from many age groups, with so much of diversity? Or you are an individual contributor and you're very comfortable and good at it? Now, if that is your innate personality, I think there is a way, if the organization at a senior level or in other domains, you require to acquire those skills. So learning for those, acquisition of those skills, imbibing those skills, I'm sure teaching, shadowing can be one method. What other tools are available in order to grow in these areas, to develop in these areas, which will also help me to find my need gaps and how I should, evolve in as an individual self?
See, you have asked a very good question, but the answer is very comprehensive. So let me give you the 7 things that are interlinked with this. And first, there is potential in people to learn, right? You must have some capacity to learn, the potential. To the extent the potential gets realized, it becomes competence. To the extent the potential is unrealized, that is the real potential, that the opportunity to grow the person, develop the person, it's in your own self. This much I have already become competent, this much more capacity I have to develop more. So that's the unrealized capacity, is the talent. So this is one part. The second is the resources I am given, especially the time to learn, or I take the time to learn. Resources could also mean sometimes I need some software, I need technology, I might require other resources. But let's take the most important resource, the time it requires to learn. The third element is the environment, which means, particularly in environment, the encouragement that I am seeking, getting for myself, including encouragement to myself as I learn, or if I am facilitating learning in others, what kind of encouragement I am giving them. And I don't want you to confuse the word encouragement with incentives. It's not about financial incentives, it's about encouragement. Third, do I have access to a mentor or a coach with whom I could have conversation, who could show the mirror? 5, what's the environment? For example, if the culture encourages learning in the organization, I will learn in one way. But if the culture is one of always asking who is to blame when something goes wrong, the first question is who rather than what. So that's very important. Sixth, what are my inner motives? What is driving me to learn? What's my agenda here? That's so important. Is my agenda to look good? Is my agenda to master something? Is my agenda something to develop without worrying about a reward? What's my agenda? What's my motive? And finally, the seventh, which is the most important, is the amount of effort I'm willing to put. Because I talked about time earlier, now I'm talking about effort. Because some of us, we quickly give up things that we start. And I loved, many years back, we worked with Pidilite, and Madhubhai Parekh, I think referred to him once earlier in this episode, the founder of Pidilite, coined a very beautiful term called finitiative. He says, I know many talented people who begin initiatives but don't finish them. So he said this. So in learning, the finishing means moving from point A to B and not giving up on the way, not getting discouraged. If something has not worked, I have to find ways to learn out of that and go further. Including there may be an effort at some point. I might say this is something I cannot learn more about because maybe my learning goal that I identified was a mistake. Maybe this is something I should never have got into. And it's time for me to realize that I have to tweak my learning goals. I have to redefine it. For example, it happens to some people that say, I want to be the best public speaker. And somehow I make that as my goal, learning goal. But sometimes I've seen it happen to a few people. All of a sudden it dawns on them, what am I trying to chase? Why is public speaking so important? So those kinds of things can also happen. That's linked to your own agenda and your motives. But these are the 7 things I talked about. If I have to summarize only one out of this, which is the key, how much effort am I going to put for learning? And the quantity and quality of the effort, which means the way I am learning and the time I'm taking to learn is the most important. So that's what I would say.
So this leads me to another question. Times are changing. The methods of learning in our times and today's Gen Z's time has changed. They are more technologically oriented. They have so many things going on in their little mobile phones. Given that, it is sometimes a challenge to even get their attention in the classroom as well as in their space of mind. What advice or suggestions would you give in order to, as a message to the young aspirants, to the young future leaders, and the current students also, on how to imbibe this living the life of learning and how it will benefit them?
No, whether you are, I just saw a post by Vivek Pandit, my friend who's a director with McKinsey, that his 17-year-old daughter has got this entrepreneur award because here is what she understood. She was watching her grandparents in Dehradun, I think must be in that Antara senior living, and they were getting older. And the granddaughter wanted to help the grandparents as they were aging. They were finding, less there's a stability in their walk or posture. So she found a beautiful method of creating some dance program for seniors and making them have fun and improving their mobility. And she studied neuroscience and she studied many other things. Vivek has put one of, he rarely puts a personal update on LinkedIn, but I think you might want to watch that. She really paid attention to how will I help my grandparents and seniors improve their self-confidence, improve their mobility, and become more independent while having lots of fun. Because imagine if learning is only pain and there is no fun, then I think no matter how much you say without pain, there is no gain. I think if you have only pain and you are hoping for gain, I think things won't happen. So there may be occasional pains that even a senior has to find a way of correcting, and there will be pain when the trainer works with them. But it has to be a lot of fun. So even when they are exercising their muscles in a way through a particularly well thought through dance form. So I think, so this I'm talking about seniors. Now, so this 17-year-old discovered that because she was fascinated, she wanted to make a difference. See, a lot of young kids actually want to make a difference. But we have to understand and appreciate their language. We cannot burden them with our past. And we don't have to sermonize to our young people to say, when I was your age, I used to do this, and our time. That's a language which is an absolute no-no. So I think with kids and with young people, one has to be like them. I'm not saying that you should forget how old you are and start doing things like a zillennial would, and in order to become cool for the younger generation. Don't expect you to do that. But be non-judgmental, be curious, understand what their ways are, and then try to intervene in a way, which is truly what design thinking teaches us, right? We observe people in their natural habitat, no matter how old they are or how young they are, and find a way to intervene and create an experience for them that matters to them. In the process, we are learning ourselves. But Neetu, I want to say something to you and me, to all of us actually. It's also very important for us to understand our own life stages, you see. The transitions we are getting through in life. When I need to learn something, if I'm still with my old ways, now I'm a transition as a senior. I must respect that and I must grow old gracefully rather than still sticking on to my past. I need to learn my new, at this stage of life, what I need to learn rather than still craving for things that were required in my previous. So our learning agenda must get transformed as we go through life transition. And only then learning will occur. Otherwise, we'll be stuck in old ways. So it's so very important for us to observe our own selves, observe what we need to learn at different stages of our life, and honor that by gracefully learning those aspects. For example, if we are not putting focus on inner calmness as we are getting older, it's true for every level, but particularly as you are getting older, if you don't have a sense of gratitude and calmness in your life and you are restless and all the time still craving for attention and still wanting to talk about your great achievements, or you want to impose on young people how great your work was, I think you are creating a stifling environment around you. Nobody wants to come and hang around with you, no matter no matter how many achievements you had in the past. So we have to learn not to burden people with our achievements. We have to learn to stay curious. And I think that humility, that curiosity, the childlike, beautiful quality, I think one must adopt at every stage in life. So just let me leave it at that. I'm sure the audience may want to ask questions or may want to offer comments. There are some wonderful people in the audience. So
Yes.
let's open it up to them.
Yes, actually, Sanjeev Tripathi has posted a very relatable, as a sequel to what you are talking about. Unlearning is also a powerful learning tool. And how to unlearn something which you have been conditioned as a person. Now you have to adapt to the new ways of life. Like you just mentioned, connect with the youngsters, connect with their ways of life. So, what would your two bits be about how to unlearn as a tool? Are there ways that can help me do that and connect with the youngsters and the Gen Z more relatively?
I want Sanjeev to ask what is the question behind the question. Sanjeev, are you there? Sanjeev, are
Yes,
you in the
sir.
room?
I'm there. In fact, I'm driving, so sorry.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
Yes,
Ask the
I'm
question. What's your
driving.
question behind your question?
So, thanks. Good evening. Thanks for this wonderful session. My question is, unlearning is also one of the powerful tool, especially mid-career. I am sharing my experience that when you realize whatever you have learned, probably you're not able to use that. And then the race of learning more. So how to have this unlearning tool can be used for having identifying that what is the appropriately my need of learning, and second part is especially the application part of that learning. How I can have learned
Yeah, there are.
that
Yeah, I think this is I call something called contextual intelligence. That means paying attention to the context. That means observing what is truly the context that I should be respecting and honoring, including my own context of life changes and stages of life transition. So the old ways which were different, which were referring to a different context, are not working. For example, a lot of Indian companies, when the liberalization started in the early 90s, they were still hanging on to the old context, trying to lobby with the government to not allow foreign competition because they were not honoring the new context. In the new context, many companies are thinking this AI revolution is something which is not going to impact my industry. This is not going to happen. So a lot of people live in that denial when things have context has changed, but I'm not paying attention to the state of the world. So observing the state of the world, observing with attention and mindfulness, recognizing the cause and effect relationship and the patterns that are beginning to form, also using systems thinking to do that. is such an important part of appreciating the context. Because if you appreciate the context, then you will recognize that you have to unlearn the old ways because they don't fit into the new context. So that's the first part. The second thing is that when I know I have to unlearn and I'm giving up the old ways, I have to replace them with some virtuous new ways which make me emotionally engaged. Because if I'm deeply saddened by what I have to unlearn, because that's my past, but I'm not inspired by the curiosity to replace that with something new that has meaning for me. See, meaning making is the most important part of learning. The whole joy of learning is to derive new meaning in life. If I am not getting that meaning, that sense of inner satisfaction about what I'm learning, I think otherwise it's just some knowledge which I'm not applying. I'm not creating any meaning. So I want to refer to this beautiful term that my dear friend in the Silicon Valley used called Varna Ali. She says, first there is knowledge, and that knowledge, when it gets applied, of course, it turns into skill. And she says, even before knowledge, there is data, then there is information, and you make sense out of it, it becomes knowledge. You apply it, becomes skills. Then, in the actual experience of applying something as a skill, you develop some wisdom. And finally, when you use that wisdom to contribute to serving the well being of all, it becomes what she calls union. So she says data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and union. This desire on our part to first unlearn and not get stuck at only getting all kinds of information and sticking to that, remembering that the times have changed. So even though I have this wonderful knowledge, but I now must know the wisdom. It's that serenity prayer that we take to God, that God give me the strength to know what I can change, and give me the strength to also understand what I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. That the wonderful serenity prayer, I think it is so important, because then when you truly know what you should be focusing on, what has real what matters most to you, and deriving meaning out of that, then once you are connected to what matters most to you, then you will find the reservoir of energy to start learning new things and forgetting about the old ways. But very often we don't take a moment to pause. We don't take a moment to reflect. We do not ask questions what truly matters to us at this stage of our life. What has heart and meaning for us? Because remember, learning is a deeply emotional experience. If your emotions are not involved in learning, chances are that learning is only some temporary knowledge or skill you have picked up. It's not going to stay with you. And the real deep emotional immersion into something requires meaning making. It's like that Viktor Frankl book, the huge, the powerful book, the book In Search for Meaning. The man, when he was put into those, in Germany, when he was put into the prison, and how he derived meaning in the most difficult conditions at that time, because he was seeing a future where he is escaping from the past. Yeah.
So, Mr. Srinivasan has asked one interesting question, very relevant to we are right now in a management institute where faculty and student interaction is there. Mr. Srinivasan, may I request you to please switch your camera on? His question is, AI seems to be a major deterrent in learning process for today's student. Please suggest ways how to overcome it.
Yeah, Srini, you are talking about how AI can prevent us from learning?
No, I mean to say it is preventing the students from learning, because most of the earlier we used to give projects, they used to brainstorm and spend a lot of time together. The teams used to come together. Now everything is AI generated, and it is very obvious and evident. And it becomes very challenging for us as teachers to impart the knowledge that we plan to impart. Of course, one of the answers is that you will have to find ways, newer ways. But again, as you said sometime for one of the questions, that the learning process is my responsibility, is not anyone else's responsibility. How to imbibe that, inculcate that responsibility onto the students? That is the genesis of my question.
Srini, I want to say something to you because, as you know, we are all learning through this. You and I are working in soil and we are both experiencing this every day. I have a small suggestion to make for you to consider. Not a suggestion, but a question. What would happen if faculty and students together were to select a project that they would do together, where both would be learners? What would happen if you were to do a project where both of you are learners and trying to do something new together? And there are no constraints. That means let them use AI, you also use AI, ask the critical question of reasoning, intervene by asking in-depth questions. So I think intuitively I feel that if faculty and students were to pick up even one project together, each faculty with a group of students were to pick up one project to do together of something that interests both the students and faculty. And there you were to apply all kinds of methods of learning. Something interesting will come out of that. You will learn about the way they use AI. They will learn about the way you are responding to AI. And some reverse mentoring may take place from students to you, and some real mentoring may take place from you to students in an actual project that matters to both. So something fascinating may come out of this intuitively is just my question to you. I don't know, I'm not giving an answer, but I'm saying something interesting could happen. My dear friend Naushir Khurodi wants to say something. Let's bring him on camera. Mr. Naushir Khurodi, former MD of several Tata companies and Voltas, and a former board member of Soil. Naushir, please unmute and say something, and let's bring him on. Can you Bharti or Tillai put spotlight on Naushir, Mr. Khurodi? And you will probably recognize his device. Yeah, go ahead, Naushir.
Anil, I wish to make one observation.
Yes.
That the only unique, non-generic feature in a company is talent. And talent comes from all these things. The talent in a company is a unique feature. The rest are generic. You can buy marketing, distribution. But talent is something unique. And talent comes from all these things. That's what I want to say. Is that the total accumulation of talent comes from all this. Okay.
Thank you, Naushad. I think what you're saying is a very powerful point, that the talent that you say is such an important part and is so precious. And the thing is, how does in an organization and in a team you honor the talent within yourself and in the team? And how do you appreciate that talent? And how do you give the opportunities for that talent to really make a difference? Because the very term that you use, as you know, Naushad, you have worked with us also extensively on these kind of assignments. The key is obviously human talent, but the key is also how to appreciate that talent, and now how not to fall into the game of trying to just put too much spotlight on a chosen few, but actually to enable the vital many in an organization to realize their talent and to contribute. The chosen few are fine, but the vital many and the talent in them, and with the collective learning, that we allow the potential to become into human capital, as it is being called. Human capital is nothing but potential being converted into the required competence, and therefore the one which you require. So I think I completely agree with you. Talent is very important. How to appreciate that, how to grow that, And as you know, we were fascinated by the question. Therefore, we created a company called Grow Talent because I was very fascinated by that question. And just like in soil, I was fascinated by the theme of what is inspired leadership. So we created a whole school around it. So it's you are absolutely right. And thank you for reminding us that. I think we have also a few other observations and questions being asked.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Madan Gopal Agarwal, he was wanting to know, how do you respond to test effectiveness of self-learning, whether I'm self-learning? Is it I have not learned unless I'm able to teach someone else? How do I understand that I have taught myself, I've grown, I've learned?
Yeah, there is some subtle learning which is very deep, in which I only look at how happy it is making me feel, because that's a subtle. It's like the spiritual aspect. It's like the meditation. It's like what Anand Prakash asked about yoga, and whether the connection between yoga and union. And Anand, the two have a lot of similarities, although Varna Ali was not referring it in the way we refer to yoga, but both are about serving the well-being of all by also having a sense of integrity amongst ourselves. So you are right. So in a spiritual way, if my sadhana, as we call it, is helping me to become a more fulfilled, happier person, then I know that I am in the right direction. But if my sadhana is actually making me learn some mantras, learn some techniques, but I'm not feeling more joyful, so that I'm talking about the deep spiritual awakening and knowledge. But now let's come down to something more specific. Let's say I want to improve how I build teams and relationships with people. And I'm observing the way that my conscious learning on how to work with teams is helping me. And then I'm reflecting and making notes. So having a learning journal is such an important part of the exercise. Journaling is a very powerful tool. And maintaining a journal, some children maintain their diary and they keep writing to the diary, dear diary. And then they read their notes from dear diary, and that helps them to learn quite a bit. So I think we forget this diary habit as we get older. We don't have a learning journal. So consciously taking time, observing what I'm learning, what it is doing to me, how is it impacting the way I'm leading my life, that's such an important part. I think that's a very nice method to do that. And sometimes, of course, there is something very specific skill, which is a specific skill like, I want to learn how to solve this particular software problem, or I want to learn this particular technology. There, of course, there are objective measurements to do that. There are testing, skill measurement. And because you are learning a functional or technical skill that can be easily evaluated through a both self-certification and a certification by experts. So that can be done. But the more difficult ones are not this objective knowledge where you can measure that you have learned this coding, or you have learned Java, or you have learned Python, or you have learned a new language and you know how to apply it. But the more subtle ones are really, am I becoming more emotionally self-aware? Do I know the way I am impacting others? Do I know how I am preventing myself from being creative? Do I know what is stopping me from finding the best solution to a problem? Do I know what are the dogmas I'm carrying which are preventing me from growing as a person? Do I know what's happening in my relationship with people who count? Do I know in the silence between I and my spouse what has come in the way? Do I know what I've done to a relationship which I should have nourished? So, that kind of reflection about self awareness is the most important and the most crucial form of learning, because that is linked to the way I'm leading my life itself. And that is such an important part of understanding about oneself, and then in partnership with others. I think there are a few other comments also coming up, but we are also running out of time. So Neetu, you please decide.
So just one important part, and Oshirji had an observation. His point is you can attract and develop talent, but how do you retain it?
Very, very important. I think people in today's time, specifically where people have lots of options, the only way you retain talent is because people are enjoying what they are doing, and they believe that it is connected to what truly matters to them. So I think understanding what the aspirations of people are, understanding what matters to both. Each time you have a dialogue with somebody who works with you, keep on asking what matters most to you and why does it matter? And how is it connected to what you're doing today? Because people are continuously internally asking, does this really matter? Is this worth it? Do I want to take this time? And there are enough people who are given this understanding. Watch out that you don't become victim to fulfilling somebody else's dreams rather than finding your own dreams. So a lot of people are told, become entrepreneurs, create your own startups, become a gig worker, do enjoy what you wish to do. All this kind of phenomena we are seeing of choice and gig workers and the future economy and roles of fractional CXOs, fractional I am a CFO of 3 companies. These kinds of things are going on right now. So I think in this kind of environment, it's very important to find out what's happening inside in people's mind and what matters most to them. And is there something we can do? And it's good to be honest with each other. If you cannot fulfill those kinds of aspirations in your company, it's better not to invest in that relationship for long. And if you can do something about it, then I'm sure something will happen. So I think we have come to the end of the day. I think my friend Atul Jaiwant, the former Chief Technical Officer of Aditya Birla Group, is given us the final comments. So I think, Neetu, I'll thank you very much for inviting me for this discussion. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I thank Mr. Bala, Mr. Amit Saha to take time out and be a part of this discussion, as a co-host. Thank you, Anil, for giving such insights, such personal learnings, professional guidance, and ways and means which we will truly like to imbibe in us as our way of life and see how we can make practical use of our session today in developing ourselves. My last words would be that learning is never ending. If you don't succeed in the first go, still try doing it again. Just try again, keep trying it, and success will be yours.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.